DeFi is one of the hottest trends in blockchain right now. There's an explosion of DeFi apps being built on this new open financial system, which has created a ton of demand from people who understand how this stuff works. So today, I want to give you a hands-on introduction to DeFi programming so that you can capitalize on this trend while it's still early. But don't worry, you don't have to be a developer yet or understand anything about blockchain in order to follow along. I'll show you everything from scratch, and it's really not as scary as it sounds. So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. When I get into DeFi programming, there are a few fundamentals that you must master, all right? And that's what we're gonna cover in this video. So the first is how to interact with Ethereum as a developer, how to connect to it, how to send transactions, how to, work with account balances and all that kind of stuff, okay? So, there's some others, but, Ethereum is really hot for DeFi. So I'm gonna show you how to use it in this video. And then next is how to use apps. So if you use any of the major DeFi apps like Compound, for example, then they all use tokens in some way or another, okay? So, Compound is a savings and lending app where you can supply tokens and earn, interest for supplying to the app, and also borrow tokens at an interest rate as well. So if you want to build your own apps that interact with any of these DeFi projects, or maybe you want to build your own DeFi app, then you have to understand how tokens work. You have to understand how to interact with Ethereum, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. First, we'll look at Ethereum accounts, right, which have public keys and also private keys. Okay, and the public key, and then also its related address, is like your username on the Ethereum network, okay? And the private key is sort of like your password, because when you use Ethereum, you don't have an individual account for each app, right? You have an account that corresponds to the entire network, which is kind of like your username, which I'm talking about here. And then your private key is your password to do anything on your behalf on the Ethereum network. And then we're going to talk about how to use ERC20 tokens inside your own apps, okay? So we're going to specifically look at the DAI stablecoin. So this is a really important cryptocurrency on the Ethereum network. It's a stablecoin whose price doesn't change. So the price doesn't go up and down. It stays constant. It's pegged at the US dollar, roughly constant. And DAI is an ERC20 token, which basically means that it follows a specific set of rules that describe how it works. It has a specific set of functions and a specific set of behavior that are common to pretty much all Ethereum-based tokens, at least the ones that are used by these major DeFi apps. So if you want to build your own DeFi app, you want to interact with any of these DeFi apps, then you have to understand how ERC20 tokens work. And so that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to talk to a live ERC20 token. We're actually going to connect to the Ethereum network and interact with it. We'll send some around, we'll inspect our balance so that you can see how to use it in your own apps. So now let's install a few dependencies before we get coding, okay? The first dependency is the MetaMask Ethereum wallet. So this is just a Google Chrome extension that lets us, manage our funds on Ethereum. It lets us hold Ethereum tokens, DAI tokens, interact with DeFi projects. So make sure you install that, and set it up and create an account. So the next dependency is Node.js, all right? And you need this to install all the project dependencies for this particular example. And finally, you need an Infura account. So Infura is actually going to allow us to connect our code example to Ethereum. I'll explain that more here in a minute, but go ahead and just sign up and save that for later. So now let's get started coding, okay? You can find the final code solution here at GitHub. I'll put a link to this down in the description below. Click download zip right here. And of course you can just, extract this and go into the project directory inside your terminal, right? Well, all right, so I've already done that. It's gonna give me an error. But once you've got that on your computer, you can just say cd DeFi intro. Okay. And the next thing you want to do is install all of the node packages for the project. So these are the dependencies. Do npm install. And then once all your node dependencies are installed, go ahead and open up the project in your text editor. So I'm using Sublime Text. So if you're brand new, you can just head over like Google Sublime Text, download this, and it should look exactly like what I'm doing, okay? So once you open the project, I'm going to open the app.js file, okay? So this is the final code solution that we're going to run through today. And, this is all JavaScript. So if you're just brand new to coding, this is pretty straightforward. JavaScript is a language that's primarily used on the front end, so to speak, so for your web browser, but JavaScript's gotten a lot more advanced over the years, and it can run in all kinds of environments, and that's exactly what we're using Node.js for. So this is just a script that we can run repeatedly to do this code solution on our computer, and we're going to build out this script in this tutorial. So basically, it has one function, this run function that we're going to customize, and we call it here. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear out everything inside of here, okay? And just do this. And that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to add tutorial here. All right. But first, let me explain a few more pieces of this. So the first thing we do at the top is connect our script to Web3. So Web3 is a JavaScript library for interacting with Ethereum, okay? So basically what it allows you to do is talk to an Ethereum node, and we need to connect to a node in order to use it, okay? So Ethereum is a blockchain, and it's comprised of a bunch of different computers called nodes that all talk to one another, okay? That's how they keep track of like the account balances, you know, how many people own how much money, you know, they're responsible for like transferring, settlement, any kind of interaction that happens in a DeFi, you know, the blockchain handles that. So we need to connect to a single Ethereum node on behalf of the entire network. And that's what Web3.js allows us to do. And then we can call functions with JavaScript that interact with Ethereum. So we can fetch our account balance. We can see how much DAI we have. We can transfer DAI. We can interact with DeFi protocols. And that's what we're going to do with Web3.js. And that's what we've done here at the top of this file. So we've just imported the Web3 library, and we connect to an Ethereum node like this. And then, of course, we add some more customization, which I'm going to show you how to do now. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to fund your test account, because we need some fake Ethereum cryptocurrency, or Ether, in order to do this tutorial. So you can get some for free at faucet.rinkeby.io. Again, this is just fake cryptocurrency. It's not actually worth anything. But here's how you do it. Basically, you make a tweet, and you paste your address in here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy my address from MetaMask. Click paste. All right, and then click tweet. And then you'll go to that link, copy it, go back to this page here, and click Give Me Ether. I'm going to click the most amount, but if you do, you have to wait 3 days before you request any more. So once that's finished, you'll have some. All right, so it's funded. So now I can open MetaMask again. So make sure you click Rinkeby. So click it here, and there you go. Boom, I've got 18.75 Ether. So now I'm going to show you how to get some DAI for this tutorial, okay? So we're going to use Uniswap, you know, which is one of the hottest DeFi apps right now. This is a decentralized cryptocurrency exchange. So I'll show you. Just click Launch App. And what it allows you to do is just swap tokens instantly. There's no like, you know, order book. There's no candlestick charts or anything like that. So make sure you're on the Rinkeby test network, okay? All right, so make sure you connect your account first. So MetaMask will ask you to do that. So just click Connect. And once you do, you'll see some balance here. Okay, so we've got 18.75 Ether. And now what we want to do is swap it for some DAI. So you can see DAI listed here. Again, this is just fake DAI on the Rinkeby test network. All right, so let's just put in like 1 Ether. Or let's just do, or, you know, 5 Ether, something like that. That gives 28 DAI. So now this is not the actual redemption rate on the main Ethereum network, but it's going to give you some test DAI to play around with for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and click Swap. And confirm swap, and then sign the transaction with MetaMask, and boom, there we go. And once that's confirmed, you'll see your transaction here. So this might be your first introduction to a block explorer. So this is Etherscan, where you can basically go verify all the transactions on the Ethereum network. You know, all your account activity is public. You can see it here. Again, this is not the real Ethereum network. It's a test network, but you can see what happened here. Basically, we interacted with the smart contract here that powers Uniswap, and we traded Ether for DAI, okay? You can actually click through this to see the DAI stablecoin smart contract, okay? So this is the one that we're going to use for our tutorial. All right, so now that I've cleared this out to its bare bones, basically I took everything out of this run function right here. That's what we're going to fill out together. You need to configure a few more things here. All right, the first is you need to grab your Infura API key. So make sure you go back to Infura and then just copy your API key and then paste it here, okay? So I'm not going to do that on screen, but you need to do that before you continue. And then next you need to grab your account from MetaMask, okay? So just go in here and just copy your account and then paste it inside of here. All right, and then next you're going to want to also get your private key. So I'll go ahead and say never, ever, 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 ever use a real private key. Never store any money in this account. It's going to be visible to other people if you save this code. So just be really careful. Don't ever use this for real money. You can just open MetaMask here and click this little these 3 dots and go to account details and click export private key. But once you do, just copy it and then go back to your project and then paste it in here. All right, so now I've filled in all my information and I've hidden that off screen, okay? So I suggest you do the same if you're, anyone's watching you do this tutorial. So next, we've configured the DAI token here, okay? So you shouldn't have to change anything here. This should be set up for you. But let me explain what this is, okay? So DAI is a smart contract, and it has an address on the Ethereum network, a lot like a username, just like your account does, okay? And so this address right here tells us where the DAI smart contract is that governs that cryptocurrency on the test network, okay? And then we have this ABI, which just allows us to understand how DAI works, like what functions it has, and all that kind of stuff. So you need these two pieces of information in order to create a JavaScript version of DAI, which we're going to use in this tutorial. So the first thing we want to do inside of here is just check how much Ether we have in our wallet. Okay, so that's just the Ethereum cryptocurrency that's native to the blockchain. We can start off by just saying let result. So this is just how you define a variable in JavaScript. Okay, so we're going to call it result, and we're going to store the balance of our account like this. So we say result equals await web3, all right, ETH get balance. Okay, so it's pretty simple. Basically, we're just using the Web3 library to fetch our balance. We pass in the account that we stored, at the top of the file. Of course, mine's off screen because of my private key. And we can go ahead and run this code to see how it works. Okay, we can just go to our terminal here and say node, so app.js. Okay, so node basically is just the way of executing the file with Node.js. And then we pass in the file name app.js here, and then click enter. And boom, there you go. So the Ether balance is 13.74, which is the exact same number that we saw in MetaMask, okay? So let me explain what this line here does. Basically, this converts the Ethereum balance. So if I comment that out and run it again, you'll see that it's this really big number, okay? That's because Ethereum doesn't use decimal places like most cryptocurrencies don't, to my knowledge. Any of them do. So basically, this is the way value for Ethereum. So that means that Ethereum has 18 decimal places behind the zero. So it can be divided quite a bit. This is different from the US dollar that has 2 decimal places behind it. Okay. So what you have to do is convert all of this to a decimal number. And that's what this line here does. So that's web3.utils from way. That's what I was talking about a second ago. You pass in the result and say you want to convert it to Ether, and then you format it that way. Okay, so run that again and see if we have 13 Ether in our wallet. So now what we can do is actually check the DAI balance. Okay, so we checked our Ether balance, and now we can see how much DAI we have in our wallet, like this. So we can do it with Web3. All right, so we have DAI here, which is the smart contract, and we can interact with it like this. We just say await DAI methods balance of. Okay, so balance of is the function on ERC20 tokens where you determine how much you have. Okay, so we pass in account just like we did here, and after that we must say call. So you can't just call the function like this. You can't call it like that. You actually have to do call at the end. Okay. And then we store the result here, and then we also, convert it to, and then we also format it just like we did here, and then we log the result to the console. So let's run the app again, and boom, there we go. We have 13 Ether and 28 DAI. So now what we want to do is actually send some DAI tokens around. So this is a really fundamental thing to understand. If you want to use a DeFi app, you want to earn some passive income, put it in a pool or something like that, then you need to understand basically how to just send tokens around on the network. So that's what we're going to do in this step, okay? So here's what the code looks like to do that. So this looks a little more complex than these 2 steps before, but it's not that bad. So let me just step through it. First, you need somebody to send the DAI to. Okay, so I've just put in a dummy address here. So do not send any real cryptocurrency to this address in real life. This is just for the tutorial. That's the to. That's the recipient. So that's one thing we need. The next one is the amount. Okay, so we're gonna send 1 DAI. Okay. But we treat it like Ether because it has 18 zeros after the decimal place, just like Ether does. So we can say amount is, Web3 utils 2 way, all right, 1 Ether, or this is really just, 1 DAI, okay? And then we create the transaction like this. We talk to the DAI smart contract. we find its methods, and then we use the transfer function. So this is the ERC20 function that actually sends DAI from one person to another. It needs 2 arguments. The first one is the recipient, so 2, and the second one is the amount of DAI we want to send, all right? So that's how we call the function. Now, that doesn't actually call the function. We actually have to say send. That actually sends the transaction and signs it with our account. So we specify who that's coming from. That's the account here, just like we did here. All right. Then the gas limit. So again, Ethereum requires you to pay gas on the network with Ether anytime you create a transaction. So this is the maximum amount of gas that we'll pay. And then we specify the gas price. So in this case, it's just 50 Gwei. And then finally, we're going to log the transaction to the console so that you can get a link and inspect the result yourself. And now we'll run it like this. Okay. And boom, there we go. We can see the successful transaction here. We can copy this link, go to our browser, paste it in, and there we go. Boom. We've transferred 1 DAI from this account to this one. And so finally, we want to inspect the balances after the transfer to observe the change. Okay, so we'll just paste in this block here. This is the same thing from up here, right? Just copy and then paste, and then click save, and we'll run the app again like this. So node app.js, it'll transfer DAI again, but we'll see that the balances actually change, okay? And boom, there we go. We can see that the DAI balance went down after we sent some, and also our Ether balance did just a little bit too. All right, so that's an introduction to DeFi programming. We've seen how to talk to Ethereum, how to use your account, how to use tokens, how to send them around, all that kind of stuff. So these are fundamental skills to know if you want to build your own DeFi apps, interact with other DeFi apps, get hired as a developer, whatever, okay?